All right, top of the morning to all the wrestling fans out there. Once again, I am TRR contributor Doug Berrill, and I have with me a very special guest who is returning for round two today. I had a very fun and enlightening time talking with this gentleman a couple months ago, and after we were done recording, TRR's Eric asked me how it went, to which my answer was, we need to do that again sometime. Uh, it was a situation where I walked in, I had some notes, I had some questions, but in the course of our chat, I learned so much about his experiences and relationships and perspective on the business that I felt like I walked away with even more questions, which is always a good thing. So, so needless to say, I was so happy when he said he'd love to do a part two sometime. So I'm welcoming back Ray Lloyd, the man best known as Glacier. We have so much good stuff to talk about, but before we dive into that, thanks for taking some time once again. It really means a lot.
Oh, well, thank you, Doug. I appreciate it, man. And I'm here. I live down in Orlando, Florida now. I'm sitting outside. I live in the coolest little neighborhood down here where, I can walk to everything I want as far as restaurants, and all that stuff. So I'm sitting outside this little bistro here, and it's a good little crowd. So if it gets to be a little loud, I'll try to move where it's not so loud.
Yeah,
But
don't
yeah, but
don't worry about that. I'm sure we'll be good. We'll be good. Yeah. So I mean, you were just saying, you're in Orlando, and of course, WrestleMania 33 was a few weeks ago. It
yeah.
emanated in your neck of the woods. And before we talk a little bit more about the show itself, and of course, the fact that it was an extra special weekend for a very good friend of yours, because that stuff is definitely on deck. But when WrestleMania comes to town, it's like a week long festival.
Yeah.
There are wrestling alums and fans and media and independent promotions and all these other things that they all kind of congregate into one general area. So there's so much
Oh,
going
yeah.
on. And I know, speaking with you last time, and also just following your posts on social media, that you definitely had a busy couple days with appearances and seminars and what have you. So I'll just start by asking you to fill us in on what you were up to during that long weekend.
I tell you what, it was 4 days that were just unbelievably fun days, but man, I was exhausted when it was all over.
Yeah, right.
It was nonstop, just from one place to the next and obviously WrestleMania is. I mean, let's face it, it's the Super Bowl of our business. It was so good to have it, here in Orlando again. I remember what I think is probably the coolest thing about the whole, event itself, or the whole series of days that built up to the event was I was watching the morning news show here on that following Monday morning, and they announced that in that 4 day period from Thursday to Sunday, it was the largest revenue generating event, 4 day event in the history of the city of Orlando. They projected over $150 million in local revenue for local businesses, and that alone is a statement that just gives you some idea how big the wrestling business has become, and how big WWE is, and how big the event, WrestleMania itself, has become. And it was awesome. I mean, I was just telling someone the other day that I did an appearance for WrestleCon on Saturday morning from 9 to noon, and honestly, I mean, the first hour of my appearance, everyone I talked to was from outside the country. Literally, everyone I remember talking to the first hour was, they were from England, Australia, everywhere but here.
It's
Which,
really incredible, like when you think
yeah,
about it. I really think that it's even more so because, I kind of make the analogy to the Super Bowl as well, and it's incredible because I think it expands even beyond the Super Bowl, because even though the Super Bowl is obviously an internationally huge thing, I think that wrestling has farther reaches because American football, it's a little more confined in terms of its popularity. The popularity of
right.
professional wrestling has no bounds.
You're right. Yeah, and I agree 100%. And it's just, I mean, and it's a testament to, I always say that wrestling has the most loyal fans in the world, and it's a testament to the fans of our business that they're willing to travel halfway around the world to come see an event, like that, and to make that kind of commitment. You obviously, most of them, I'm sure, save all year long, maybe even longer, for this event that is, is one that hopefully they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. So as far as the experience, and I think that's the other thing that makes wrestling, one of the main things that makes it such a great business is that it's the only business, in my opinion, where the fans can really, really get up close and personal with the people that are involved in the show itself. I mean, the NFL, when they have the Super Bowl and stuff like that, and when you have the World Series, the fans congregate to whatever city, but it's very rare that they get a chance to actually, mingle with the stars involved in it, and so that's another big bonus that wrestling fans do. And also the other good side of that is too that in wrestling, you kind of learn, if you're going to have any level of success in the wrestling business, you better learn how to relate to the fans. You better learn how to talk to them and have conversations, and I feel that wrestlers do that better than any other professional athlete, which is, once again, I think one of the reasons why our fans are so dedicated to to us and to the industry.
Absolutely, and it's so funny that you say relating to the fans because I'm kind of looking at my notes here, and we were gonna talk a little bit about WrestleMania in a little bit, the event itself, and I definitely had a note or two about the ability to relate to the fans. So it's good that you say that.
Yeah.
We'll definitely get into that. So when you were there for the long weekend, I know you had some seminars, there were some shows, there were some appearances. Did you get an opportunity to reconnect with anybody you hadn't seen in a while?
Oh, yeah. And that's one of the other things that I was telling all of my buddies, as it was we're building up to that week, is I said, the great thing about, this whole event for me is, and granted, doing some appearances, I actually did a wrestling show on Thursday night with Joey Janela, which I'm just now learning how big of a following this kid has, which is awesome. And
yeah.
But I always was. I said to every person that I knew, they see looking forward to it. I said, what I'm looking forward to is a reunion that I'll have with so many of my buddies that I haven't seen in a long time. And I did. I got a chance to see Stan Hansen, of course Dallas, but Dallas not see each other good. But anyway, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, two people who really, really influenced me, throughout especially the early years of my career. I got to see Chavo Guerrero for the first time in a long time, and Chavo and I talked on Facebook a good bit, but I had not seen him face to face in years, so it was really, really cool to see him. Got to, see Al Snow, Gene Okerlund, who I love Gene, and I don't get to see him near enough. So yeah, it was just Bobby Fulton of the Fantastics, who was another person who really, really, really helped me a lot early in my career. So just to see those guys and just to have some time to catch up and reminisce and thank them. And but I'll tell you what, probably the coolest experience for me the whole weekend, or the whole 4-day period, was when I got to that Saturday morning to do my appearance with WrestleCon. I was sitting next to, they had like two of us at each table, and the guy who was next to me was Al Perez. And a lot of younger wrestlers may not remember Al Perez, but he was a huge name in the world-class wrestling back when, the Von Erichs in Texas. And he was one of the guys that, when he walked away from the wrestling business over 20 years ago, he just really kind of disappeared. I was very happy to find out that he now lives in Tampa, and he's been working for UPS all these years. He has a very successful life after wrestling, which we can't always say that, but I mean, he's one of the guys that when I was, such a big fan, in the 80s, going through high school and college, I mean, he was one of the guys I really gravitated to because he was, to me, he looked the part, and he was such a great, most of the time he was a heel, and he just had great matches. I mean, because he did, I was just talking to someone else about that today, that he did all the fundamentals, but he did them so darn good, and he told such a great story in the ring that he was just one of those guys that I really aspired to want to be like, even before I got in the wrestling business. And when I actually got in and I started training, he was one of those guys I always thought, God, if I can get anywhere near as good as that guy, I'll be doing pretty good. And so in the first time in my life, in my career, I got to sit down face to face with him and talk with him, and we exchanged numbers. And I just told him, I said, I don't care what happens the rest of this weekend, meeting you and being able to tell you the kind of influence you had on me over 20 years ago, it's something that I'm glad I got the opportunity to do that. So and that was something that was totally unexpected. I never ever thought that I would have that experience. So I kind of got to be a little bit of a fan again, as well as a colleague, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when you talk about all that stuff, I mean, when WrestleMania comes to town, it's so special.
Oh yeah.
For all those reasons. And you talk about reconnecting with people who influenced your life, but it all passes its way down, and so not only do you get to reconnect with friends and mentors and students, but because so many people congregate on it, all of these young aspiring wrestlers get to come to one place that is so dense with so much talent and so much advice. Yeah. So when you went to any of those shows, was there anything or was there anybody who stood out to you?
Yeah, there was. It was. I did the show that Thursday night. It was a midnight show, and I was on it with Dan Severn and I had briefly got to know Dan when we both wrestled in UWFI back in the early '90s. So it was really good to see him again because I had not seen him since then. And and all the guys that work for guys and girls that work for Joey Janela's show. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, because quite frankly, I don't follow a lot of the younger wrestlers these days. Not because I don't want to. It's just, I'm just kind of semi-retirement mode these days.
Yeah, definitely.
But the thing is, I say that, but it's funny how a lot of stuff that's happened recently is pulling me back into being more full-time in wrestling. I can tell you a little bit more about that as we talk later. But I had no idea what to expect. I thought this was going to be a show for 200-300 people, no big deal. I mean, I get there, and by the time we get ready to the show, there's a couple thousand people at this show.
Wow.
And, for an indie show, that's a pretty darn good crowd.
Yep.
And and I was in like a Royal Rumble type match, and just to go out there and get just such an unbelievably good reception, and talk to the younger wrestlers in the back, and they were all just so humble and so just kind and receptive of anything that I've talked about with them, and it's just nice to really be able to be comfortable with transitioning into that role of being the older veteran now, because when I was the young buck who was just trying to be a sponge and wanting any minute of any veteran's time, and I'm still that way. I really am. I mean, as much as I've gotten to really be great friends with Stan Hansen, every time I say I'm talking to Stan Hansen, there's this moment where I'm looking and going, I'm talking to Stan Hansen.
Yeah.
But then I look at my phone and I go, I got Stan Hansen's number on my cell phone. What the heck? But yeah, it's I really take I take that very seriously. That role of being a veteran, and I try so hard to be able to to be receptive to any questions they have and try to answer as the best I can, and just be receptive to anything that I can do to help them, because I was so fortunate to have so many veterans come along and help me, that were very unselfish, and so I just feel like I'm at that point in my life where it's my time to be that guy, and I wholeheartly embrace that.
Yeah, I think it probably means the world to those guys. Like anybody who's actually serious about it, who's worth their salt. It probably means a lot to take that in and to incorporate it in what they're doing.
Absolutely.
When we talked last time, we talked a little bit about a very good independent promotion in our neck of the woods, and I remember seeing the promotional poster. I sent you a message about some of the folks that were familiar to us that were heading down to Orlando. You said, "Well, tell them to be prepared for some chops."
But I don't think I really delivered any into that match. I can maybe a couple, but I was pretty. I was pretty nice as far as I was pretty reserved with the chops.
All right. No, but
yeah, it was really I've been able to mentor a few. I say mentor, not me solely, but I've been able to help along a few of the younger wrestlers that I felt like really had the talent to make it to the next level, but also had the work ethic. Because I don't care how much talent you have in the world, if you don't have the work ethic, you're not going to go anywhere anyway. And so and even with the work ethic, the odds of making it are rare. But there were certain people that I finally got, like one person I coached over the phone some and get advised. But I felt like I know her, but I never had met her face to face. Was a young up and coming female wrestler named Lucy Mendez, and she was trained by Harley Race, and I got to finally meet her face to face, which is just such a cool experience because just to know there's someone out there who really appreciates your advice and your your constructive criticism, and get to kind of see them face to face and know that hopefully you're doing something that might guide them a little bit more down that path was pretty cool. So that was another big thing for me that happened during the whole weekend.
Yeah, and then there's inevitably going to be a couple of those people that go and work those shows and they congregate for WrestleMania and they go to the show, and then one day, man, they're they're standing there and they remember those experiences. So yeah, I mean that's huge. That's huge, man.
Yeah. And one of the things I don't know if we mentioned it on the last show, but and I didn't get a chance to see him while we were down here, but I saw him not too long ago. Is one of the guys I had a small hand in training early on in his career, which is now probably about 12 years ago, was Xavier Woods.
Oh, no kidding.
New Day. Yeah, and I take no credit for. I just the guy who trained him was someone that I kind of helped mentor back along, and so when he was training, Austin or Xavier. I went down and helped train him a lot, and a lot of the shows that he worked his first couple of years, I was on the shows, and I, watched his matches and kind of helped him. And we've been friends, all along, but, he's a perfect example, and I always use it as someone who, he's in a great spot now, but it took him, about 10 years to get there. And he didn't give up, he was just persistent. He kept pressing along, and that's what I tell any young wrestlers that, if you have any chance of making this business, it's probably going to take you a while before you ever get noticed or get a chance to show them what you got. And that's just the nature of the business. It really is. It takes a few good years to really get a grasp of this. This is not easy to do, and that's I laugh and shake my head when I talk to people who think that that somehow you can become a professional wrestler in 10 easy left. It just does not happen.
Right. No. Yeah, but that's really cool about Woods. He's one of those guys that I think, like you kind of alluded to, he's kind of paid his dues. He's taken his time, and he's grown through the ranks. But, he's got his deal right now with the New Day, and the New Day is very over. And if the time comes where they break back off into singles, I think that it's been an opportunity to let fans know what he could do as a singles wrestler, because he is talented in the ring, but he's also very talented in terms of psychology and storytelling and on the microphone.
Yeah, and he's a very approachable superstar. He's very active on social media. He gets out. He's big into the sci-fi and the gaming, and he goes to a lot of these conventions and. He's just walking around, the convention. Just like, I ran into each other Dragon Con in Atlanta, about a year ago, and they were having that. And but here's the thing too, Doug. It's one thing that's really important for me to mention is that, and when I do a lot of my wrestling seminars, which I'm starting to do a lot more of those, is one of the things I talked about is that the reason why he got his break, or at least in my opinion, one of the main reasons why he got his break, is because when the opportunity came, he was ready. He was prepared. He'd done everything he could from his end that he could control to be ready. He looked smart. He was in great shape. He had paid his dues. He had experience. He could have a great match with practically anybody at that point. So when the opportunity came, he was ready. And it took 10 years or so to get there, but he was ready. And I always say that for someone who deserves an opportunity, the worst thing in the world is to never get the opportunity. The second worst thing in the world is to get the opportunity and not be ready for it. And so many young wrestlers think they're ready for it when they're not. And and I always say you don't know what you don't know. So you need someone who does know, who will hopefully steer you down that path and say, okay, look, as much as you want it right now, you're not ready. If they were to give you a trial right now, you wouldn't pass. You wouldn't make the cut. And they have to be okay with saying, okay, well, I got to get more season. And that's a hard thing for someone who is hungry and wants to get that break, but this is, man, one of the greatest never know how long it's going to take. I mean, it can happen in 2 or 3 years, but that's very, very rare for that to happen. And so because I'm just telling you, it's like anything else. I mean, you can't. I always say, I heard Tom Pritchard say this one time. What is it about pro wrestling that makes people think they can just somehow learn to do a little bit of training and move to the top rank? Do you see anybody do that in pro baseball or pro basketball or pro football? No, it just doesn't happen. It's not the way the universe works.
Exactly. Like you can be the hottest 18-year-old baseball prospect in the country, who everybody feels like you're destined for greatness, but guess what? You're not destined for greatness tomorrow.
Right. And and Paige, one of the things that Paige always says is you got to be willing to put in the work. And it's just one of my really favorite quotes. I just put it on Facebook today on my personal pages. Came from Michael Jordan, and it said, he said, a lot of people have talent, but skill takes hard work. And he said, do you think I run up and down the court every day for 3 hours just so I know what it feels like to sweat?
Yeah. That's a good one.
Sorry, some guy's pulling up on a motorcycle. I apologize for the noise.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine. No, that's a great story.
No matter how talented you are, no matter how great of an athlete you are, there's still a certain skill set that you got to master before you can get to the point of where you're ready for that next level, that top level. So, and that's a lot of people get impatient, but I understand that. Some of that's just used, so.
Yeah, and I mean that, you give an example of a guy who definitely paid his dues, and he kind of rose the ranks, and he kind of honed his craft, and really, not only is he successful now, but he could probably, if given a singles opportunity, could be successful down the road. So, yeah, he's somebody
absolutely.
I feel really good about. Yeah,
he's got. I believe he'll have as long of a career as he wants. I really do.
Absolutely.
Because he's got a good head on his shoulders too, and that counts for so much. It really does. In anything, but especially in this business.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on a little bit on that weekend, because of course your good friend, who you've alluded to already, your good friend Diamond Dallas Page, was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, and that was an absolutely great moment. I know I was looking forward to it as a big fan of his, so as a friend, it must have been that much better,
It was, obviously I was very proud and happy for him, just like everyone that knows him and all those wrestling fans around the world. I mean, Paige is that guy that, we've always referred to as the world's greatest long shot. I mean, nobody would have ever dreamed that Paige would have had the career that he had, and I mean, except for probably Paige,
Yeah, right.
But yeah, he, sorry, just saying hello to one of my buddies who walked up here.
You're good.
Giving him a hug there, I mean, Paige is, like I said, I think I mentioned to you a little bit earlier, he and I got together on Thursday of WrestleMania week, and we both were doing interviews with Uprock, the online news magazine, and then afterwards we got a chance to talk a little bit, and then, and I had said to him about a month earlier that, hey, I understand you're going to have a lot of people bugging you for passes. Don't worry about me. Give me one, whether you're going to give me one or not. Just know that I'll be one less guy you have to worry about because I know you have all the people from the Performance Center that want to come and all that. And even though you're a Hall of Fame inductee, they still only give you a limited number of passes because they have everyone else they got to take care of too. And anyway, so we hung out on Thursday, did their interviews, we caught up a little bit, which was awesome. And then the next morning, Steve, his business partner, gave me a call, Steve Yu, and said, hey, Dallas has got a pass for you. He really wants you to be there. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And so I had a chance to go, and I actually got a chance to hang out with one of our former producers that was also in town to see Paige get inducted, Neil Pruitt. And Neil is a guy that most people may not know his name, but because he was behind the scenes like most producers are. But the thing he is most well known for is during the NWO days, he was the guy that pretty much produced all the NWO vignettes, and he was actually the voice of NWO. He was the guy that always said NWO,
New World Order.
Very popular during the 90s. And so it was great to see Neil, we got a chance to, and Neil took some really cool pictures when I didn't even know he was taking pictures, and there's a really cool one. We had our seats, but we didn't actually even sit in our seats. We actually went and stood at the far end of the Amway Arena here, so that we could just look straight ahead and watch the whole ceremony. And it was just a great place to just catch everything. And then Neil took some really cool pictures of me kind of like in the foreground with Dallas way out in the background. You know, it was just something that means a lot to me. But just listen to Paige speak, and obviously, Paige would have loved to. I think in a perfect world, have Dusty to be there to induct him, which is what Bischoff said when he was doing the introductory speech. But we always get everything we want, and unfortunately, with Dusty, passing a couple years ago, that was something that just wasn't meant to be. But when Dallas gave his speech, I was talking to Brenda, his wife, about in true work ethic style. Dallas worked like months on that speech, and he came across being very natural, which is because Paige is a pro. But yeah, he told a lot of great stories about his struggles and how he believed in himself when no one else believed in him. And it is. I mean, he always says that work ethic equals dreams come true, and that's so true in the sense that whether your dreams work out exactly or your goals work out exactly the way you want, the harder you work, the more good stuff happens to you, and the more opportunities open up for you. I don't care what it is you're doing, and he's just a shining example of that. And I remember when he closed out. The Paige and I go back and forth. He kind of calls me the king of quotes. So I always try to give him quotes all the time. I think he might be able to use on his stuff he's doing now with DDP Yoga, because he does on his channel. He does a motivational Monday and stuff like that. But I gave him a quote a couple of months ago, and it was pretty cool. He used it to kind of wrap up his speech, and the quote was, "In order to be an overachiever, you first have to be in order to be an overachiever, first you have to be an overbeliever." And it was kind of cool that he kind of used that to finish up his speech, and I thought,
yeah, right.
I gave him that. But yeah, all along, man, what a huge honor for him. Long overdue. And I can't say enough good things about him. I'm so proud of him. And the great thing is, with the DDP Yoga now, he's someone who's totally reinvented himself. I remember years ago when it was just before it took off, when he was really getting to the point where he wasn't sure if it was going to work out for him or not. But back when it was what he called YRG, Yoga for Regular Guys, before he rebranded it. And once he rebranded it, and it started to kind of take off, started to get traction, and he was working so hard with it, and I was just like, Paige, once again, I foolishly said to Paige, I was like, man, why are you working so hard on this at this point in your life, man? And he said something that has always stuck with me. He said, bro, he said, I want something that's going to outlive me. And now that's what DDP Yoga is going to do. I mean, I'm sure Paige will be around for a long time, but when his time comes and he is gone, he's still going to be changing lives with the videos and everything else he's put out there. He's going to be like Jack LaLanne. He always says, which I think is such a great combination. Only Paige would come up with this combination of characters. He says, I'm like Jack LaLanne and Tony Robbins and a straight Richard Simmons all rolled into one. But that's just Paige. So, I'm so happy for him. I'm so proud for him on so many levels. But I think the thing I'm most proud of is really what he's doing now. He inspired people before. Now he's changing people's lives. He's saving people's lives, and that's something that goes way beyond anything he could have ever done in a wrestling ring.
Yeah, no, it's so cool, because there are gonna be people out there who they've never watched a wrestling match in their life,
Exactly.
but their life might be affected by Paige, So I think that's such a cool thing.
Yeah, a shining example of that is if anybody looks, they follow him. I'm learning a lot about social media because I've just recently acquired a social media or marketing team to help me. So I'll talk a little bit more about that before we finish. But because now I'm starting to look at stuff I never even paid attention to, and just to kind of be in line with what you just said, is I noticed that Dallas has about 180,000 followers at Diamond Dallas Page through his Facebook page and Twitter and all that. Well, he's got over 500,000 followers, as DDP Yoga.
Yeah.
Right there says there's a lot more people who may not even care what he did in the wrestling business, but they know him for the DDP Yoga.
Yeah, no, it's been a really positive and impactful thing, And
it has, yeah.
And I know that you have relationships with some other people that were inducted this year, namely the Rock and Roll Express, who you named earlier.
Yeah.
So we got the Rock and Roll Express. We got Teddy Long. Of course,
Teddy forever.
Yeah. Beth Phoenix, who you may not know as well, and Kurt Angle. But what do you think about the rest of the class?
You know what? I think it was a really, really good class. I'm going to go ahead and say this just because if I don't say it, I'll kick myself for not saying it. But I put this on social media on Facebook probably about a month before the Hall of Fame. One of my closest friends in and out of the wrestling business is Tonga Fafita. Everyone knows him as King Haku. I just think it's a real crime that this guy is not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I mean, he's someone who has just had a legendary career, both in WWF and in WCW, and then came back to WWE. I mean, the guy is just, anybody that's followed wrestling over the last 30 years, you couldn't have missed him. And they don't just put anybody in the position to tag team with Andre the Giant. When Andre really needed a tag partner, near kind of the twilight of his career. So he's someone that I love him dearly as a person. I consider him literally family, and I'm just I almost take it like a one-man campaign. Without trying to be too much of a thorn in anybody's side. It's just that I'm going to continue to campaign for. I just don't understand why in the world someone like that has not gotten that recognition. But I digress.
No, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, the Rock and Roll Express. Beth Phoenix is someone I never have gotten to know. I certainly admire her. I saw her speech, which I thought was just an amazing speech. It really, really was. Just says a lot about her as a person and what some of her goals were and still are. As far as advancing the business for women, and female athletes, which I think right now the future looks very bright for any female wrestler who's wanting to pursue this as a career. And the advice I always give to anybody, and I give to all female wrestlers as well as male wrestlers, is you got to do it for the right reason. This has got to be your passion. And I always say, there's a quote that I always use. I always say, it's okay to want the fame and the fortune, you just can't want that first. I mean, this has to be your passion. And I always say it can be your part-time job right now, but it's got to be your full-time passion. Because if you don't have at least that, then you're dead in the water, as far as trying to make it in this business, And because this business is going to break your heart a million times over, and you got to be strong enough. Your passion, your why has got to be stronger than the disappointment, But then she talks a lot about that too, about the advancement of women in wrestling, and I thought she did an amazing job with that. The Rock and Roll Express. I mean, these guys. Thank God I met them early on in my career, and it's so funny that I get now when I see them and I buddy up to them and I talk to them. It's just amazing to me, and once again, I feel like a fan because I'm so happy that I have that relationship with them, and I can just walk up and we can just kind of start talking and pick up right where we left off maybe a year or two ago or whatever. But these guys, I mean, one of the greatest tag teams ever, and in my opinion, maybe the greatest babyface tag team, just because of the fact that the chemistry they had.
When I think about the phrase, if you give me the phrase "the hot tag," I think about the Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah, exactly, and they just epitomized, what was good about wrestling. Two guys who, let's face it, very average-sized guys that as singles may have had very average careers, but somebody was smart enough to put them together, whether they even knew what they were doing at that time, and whatever that magic it factor is that happens every once in a blue moon in wrestling happened with those two guys. And somebody was smart enough to observe that and say, hey, we may have something here, and then the rest of it's history. But they're just two great guys outside the ring. They've done both a lot to help me. And it's one of the things where I always say that the greatest, I think I said this the first time we did your previous episode, is, and I mean this with all my heart, I mean, the greatest honor that I've ever had, the greatest accomplishment ever in the wrestling business for me is to be able to walk into a locker room of legendary wrestlers like, say, Rock and Roll Express, and be accepted as a peer among that group. And to know that I have a seat at the table with that group is just, still blows me away.
Yeah.
Like I said, to be able to walk up to a Stan Hansen, shake his hand, give him a hug, and stand there and talk to him for 15 minutes, it's still just, it's hard for me to fathom that sometimes. But yeah, the Rock and Roll Express, long overdue. It's going to help them, and this is all they've ever done, and it's probably all they will ever do. I mean, there's going to be a time when they don't really step out of the ring, completely. I love the fact they're still doing the indie shows, but they both have their wrestling schools, and this, this having a Hall of Fame title behind your name is obviously going to be something that can help them business wise, and they should, so that'll be great for them. Kurt Angle, someone that I've had a great relationship with Kurt, as an acquaintance. Kurt and I have never become great friends, but I did. Most people may know that I did a movie with Kurt, which I shot in Pittsburgh up in 2014, I think. That's when it was. Maybe no, it was 2011. I'm sorry, a little further back. Called River of Darkness, and I played his nemesis in the movie, so I got a chance to work with him pretty much throughout the whole movie, which was really cool. And that's where I really, even though I got to know him through TNA when I was an agent there with Dusty. Behind the scenes, I never really got to know him, really, really good. When I did the film, that was when it was, a lot of fun to get to know him and hang out with him. And again, listen, I mean, Kurt Angle could have been inducted, the moment that they started having the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been great for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, this whole class, like, really, I'm looking at it up and down, and I'm like, man, everybody who's in this class deserves to go, and they probably deserve to go yesterday.
Yeah, it's a great class, and I think they do a really good job every year of putting together a diverse class every year, and I think it's and it just goes to show you how many people affected the wrestling business, through in different generations, and how many people, made people want to tune in and watch this thing called pro wrestling. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's a great thing. I was really, really expecting and kind of hoping and expecting that they were going to make an announcement about maybe, actually having the physical Hall of Fame, maybe here in Orlando. To me, I mean, the Hall of Fame is really not complete unless you actually have a physical place where we can go. So you can actually, admire these legendary figures of our business. I hope that that's something that's going to happen soon. With Orlando now becoming like the epicenter of the wrestling world again, Central Florida. To me, it'd be an ideal place to put it, but I'm sure there are a lot of factors that they have to work out before they finally decide to make that happen. But I certainly hope they do decide to do it sometime soon, whether it's Orlando or not, wherever. I hope they do have a physical place for parents and kids to go together and wrestling fans alike, and just go to relive wrestling history with the legendary people that are in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and honestly, I thought that was in the cards. I thought they were.
I did too. I really did.
Yeah, and I thought they were building it in Orlando. So, I don't know.
If there's anybody listening that has influence on that, build it in Orlando. Why wouldn't you? I mean, this is the freaking vacation capital of the world. I mean, people are already going to be here going to see the mouse. So.
It would be a perfect place, and I thought it was already coming, and that would be awesome if they actually had the physical Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
so,
and you need to. They really need to make it really complete. So.
No, it was a great class of the Hall of Fame, and in reference to the show itself, Eric and I had discussed this a little bit, and you referenced it earlier when we were talking. WrestleMania is essentially WWE's Super Bowl. And, for what should be your most important payoff show, I think the cruel irony is, and this is not unlike the Super Bowl, is that it pushes so hard to be a marketable spectacle. It's actually the show that caters to your most hardcore fans the least. If that makes any sense,
Oh, yeah.
And so, in so many ways, WrestleMania can be a mixed bag of highs and lows. And I've seen opinions on this year's show that rank all over the board. There will always be things that you can nitpick at. But as a whole, I walked away more satiated than I did after the Dallas show, 32. I thought this was definitely a better show than that. There were a couple things that missed their mark of the matches I was most anticipating. I thought that Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton fell a little flat. But there were also matches I walked in with concerns for, and it far exceeded my expectations. And that's like AJ Styles and Shane McMahon. I had my concerns about that match. I thought it delivered. I thought that Seth Rollins and Triple H was completely on point, and I thought the return of the Hardy Boys was completely perfect. So I thought there were a lot of positives from this year's show. So just give me some of your thoughts on the show in general.
And I was kind of, I guess, I mean, I was, for whatever my opinion is worth on, I wanted, my initial thought was to say lukewarm, but I was a little bit more than lukewarm. I was, I gave it, if you had to give it a grade as a teacher, that's kind of what I tend to do is, I would have given it like a B+. And not to say that there was anything that I thought was major wrong with it. It's just hard to live up, and it's more, if anybody knows anything about not being able, or having to try to live up to the hype, it's me, trust me. But now I think that's the thing too, is like, and I think it's very hard for, like, if you kind of equate, like Super Bowl to WrestleMania, it's become such a spectacle that I think people really have unrealistic expectations, that no matter what is actually advertised, they think all of a sudden there's just going to be, just these mind-blowing moments. And I think they delivered, this year pretty good. I mean, I think the Hardy Boys coming back was a pretty good, surprise, if you want to call it that. I'm just one of those guys that, and I think overall, I think WWE did a great job. My hat's off to Triple H for being at this point in his life, but everything else he has on his plate to be able to train and go out there and deliver on, any kind of match. But I thought he had a heck of a match. At this point in his career, it says an awful lot about his work ethic, and so I thought that was, a great thing. The Undertaker match, obviously, was something that was, I think it was solid. I mean, same thing. I mean, like I said, I think people have to understand, that the guy that at this point in his career, people have no idea what this business does to you physically, and to be out there still going at this point in his life, let's face it, in the twilight of his career, to go that hard, even just one time. People have no idea. I mean, you just have no idea what that takes, and it takes out of you, and the recovery afterwards. I mean, even in your youth, a match like that would probably take you a while. So, I thought the way he did his exit was very, very appropriate. I'm like everybody else. Listen, the wrestling side, the wrestling fan of me, nobody ever wants to see the Undertaker retire. I mean, we don't like him to kind of be like Superman and be around forever, but that's just not the way it works, But AJ, AJ's someone I've known since he pretty much got started. AJ's always going to deliver, and he's one of those guys that, to use the old term that we say in the wrestling business, he literally can have a great match with a broomstick, and so.
I literally had that phrase written down.
Yeah, it's just an old phrase, but he's one of the very few people, and I don't say that a lot about, very, very few people. I used to say that about Billy Kidman, because Kidman was the same way. You want somebody to have a good match, put him with Kidman. I mean, he was always going to deliver, and AJ's the same way, especially at this point in his career, where he really has matured as a person and as a wrestler. He can handle the fame and the stardom. He's a very level-headed guy. It's a double-edged sword as far as my critique of Shane McMahon. And once again, whatever my opinion is, or if it's just that one opinion, but I see someone who, he's not someone who's built as a professional wrestler, but and it's just he's always been put in a spot to where he comes out and all of a sudden he can compete with these guys that are supposed to be the highest level of athlete in the business. And all of a sudden he can just, kind of put on the comfortable clothes and go out there, and all of a sudden somehow he can compete at that level. I don't. To me, I think it's hard for people to buy that. Even though he goes out there, and I give him all the credit in the world, I think he does a hell of a job every time he goes out there. I'm just saying, if I had to say something about it to critique it, that would be it. It's like, I think it's very hard for people to. The believability is, and not that you're not a tough guy, not that he's not a good athlete. I'm just saying, someone that when you're not labeled a professional wrestler, and then you step in there, and all of a sudden you can have a 15-minute match with one of the top stars in the business worldwide. To me, it's just kind of like,
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like that was one of those matches I was concerned about, because AJ Styles really, I mean, he's had a great run for years. He had a phenomenal run. I mean, no pun intended when I say phenomenal. You know, he had a great run in TNA. He went to Japan, and he's come to WWE, and he's made such a splash. He's been so good. He really is one of the hottest wrestlers on planet Earth right now. And so, no, I totally feel you, because that was my concern when they put him in that match. I was like, what are you doing putting one of the best wrestlers on planet Earth against somebody who, again, no disrespect to him, he's going to work his butt off, and he's going to try to make it as good as he can, but he's not a professional wrestler, you know, on a day-to-day basis.
I think that, you know, and this is something that I know what I know, is that I always believe our goal is to suspend disbelief. That's what the paying customer wants. They want to be able to go in and pay a premium price for WrestleMania, and forget about whatever they have to go home to when they leave there. They want to step into this world, and there should be a certain level of magic that they can buy into. You know, not too hokey where they go, no, I don't buy that. And I think with that's where the kind of the line gets blurred some, you know, and not to harp on that too much, but you know, like AJ, one thing that it is amazing to me about AJ, I worked one of the last shows that he worked before he went to WWE. I worked with him. It might have been his last show. It was the WrestleMania show, the Luke Gallows organization out right outside of Atlanta. And the first thing I said to him, one, it meant everything to me that he came up to me and said, I really appreciate, you know, you wishing me well, because, you know, you've been there from the beginning. You've always been supportive, and you've always been one of the guys that I always connected great with and looked up to. I don't know if he said looked up to, but something along those lines. Yeah. I'm not saying I had any single hand in anything that AJ's ever done, but I've always admired him. We've always had a great relationship. You know, he's someone that I've always felt like, you know, I'm proud to see him doing good, because he's a Georgia boy like me, you know. So, but it's one thing I said to him. I remember saying to him, I was like, AJ, like, you don't freaking age.
I was looking at his birthday the other day, because he and I share a birthday, not the same year, but we share a birthday, and I was actually looking up some information, and he's turning 40 this year, which I'm not saying that's old. Definitely, I'm not saying that's old, but I'm just saying for somebody who's
wrestling years, it is.
It's
top level.
Yeah, you know, and he's on top of his game in WWE right now.
Yeah, well, and he's like Flair. He's a phenomenon, you know. I mean, he's one of those guys. People used to always say about Ric Flair, he's probably from Mars, because he's not human. You know, I mean, he go out there and do all this stuff and bounce back and, you know, be the freshest guy, you know, in the ring the next night. I mean, and that AJ's the same way. I mean, I mean, it is something that, you know, it's a gift that he has, and rarely in life does someone who had that gift like that get aligned with the perfect career they're supposed to be doing, you know. And I believe that happened for him, and I just, you know, I wish him all the success in the world, because not only is he a great superstar in the ring, and he was a superstar way before he became a WWE superstar, but he deserved to have this run. He deserved to be a worldwide household name. And people can argue what they want, and I say this out of total respect for him, because, you know, like I said, I'm one of his biggest fans. I think he's an amazing athlete, amazing wrestler. Is through Impact Wrestling, TNA, whatever you want to call it, you know, he may not still have ever been that household name, like, you know, someone who's not a hardcore fan might not have known who he was, but now, you know, he gets that machine behind him to give him that kind of publicity that he's always deserved, especially over the last 10 to 15 years. So now he is a household name, and he deserves that. He deserves to be a household name. And I think if he would have never gotten that opportunity to have a run like this, it would have been a big injustice, probably one of the biggest injustices in the wrestling business. So I'm so happy that for him, personally and professionally, he is one of those guys who truly, truly earned the right to be there way before he even went there. He could have gone 5-7 years before, and it still would have been, you know, right on time. So yeah, I applaud him. I applaud his effort. I'm just amazed that the guy is able to still have the caliber of matches that he has at this point in his career, because, like I said, I mean, wrestling years are like dog years, man. I mean, you know,
yeah, right.
You know, your body just, you know, it wasn't designed to take that kind of a beating, and he just bounces back, and God bless him for doing so. And I just really, I'm happy that he represents the wrestling business because he's a good person. He's a good, he's a good role model for anybody who's aspiring to be in this business, or anybody who's just a fan of this business. I mean, he's that guy who's going to represent this business well, always.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and we're probably winding down soon, but I want to leave you with a question that relates to that. There's been plenty of long debates about what gets guys over and what people need, and there's been all this controversy over size, and you know what I mean. And so AJ Styles is a guy who he's probably one of the best wrestlers on planet Earth today, but he's billed at 5'11", 220.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the direction that WWE is going in when they bring in guys like AJ Styles, Kevin Steen, a.k.a. Kevin Owens, El Generico, a.k.a. Sami Zayn, Finn Balor, guys like that, and those are top guys? What do you think?
You know what? I'm really glad you asked that because this is something that I talk about a lot. And before we finish, I want to just make sure I can kind of give you an update on kind of what I've got going on here too, because it's pretty exciting stuff. But as a matter of fact, I was in the gym today and I ran into Jim Powers. And anybody that watched wrestling back in the '80s probably remembers Jim Powers from back when he was in WWF, and was this guy that had a great build and a great look, and always was kind of a solid mid-card guy, but he's considered a very respected veteran these days, and that's the one thing that he said to me, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily my opinion, but I'll say exactly what he said. He says, Ray, I record the show and I try to watch it, but when I turn it on, everybody looks like kids.
Yeah, right.
And here's my take on it, honestly, Doug, is everything evolves, I'm a big believer, and once again, when I do seminars, I'm doing some training down here in Orlando at one of the schools now. I just said this last week to the guys, is I said, and this is everybody has their opinion, but I feel like that I feel pretty strongly about this, is professional wrestling is something to where, the way I always viewed it, if you're going to make it professional wrestling, if you're going to even be at the indie level, then you need to, like you said, be larger in life. And one of the ways that you can be larger in life is you got to project the persona, the image that you're tough, because this is something that it's a tough business that tough people do. I mean, I think I'm a pretty good example of you can clean up pretty well and still be, kind of a normal looking guy, but I mean, I still carry myself in a way that I feel like most people say, okay, he's probably a tough guy, but the thing is what I mean by that is because I used to get kind of labeled as being anti-cruiserweight, so to speak, and I'm really not. I'm not at all. What people misunderstand is that what I'm anti people who won't get their butt in the gym and work out, who won't do the other things they can do to overcompensate for maybe not being a certain height or being a certain weight. I always use the example of someone like a Ricky Morton, or my prime example is always Tully Blanchard back in his prime. Mike Graham, Eddie Graham's son. Those guys, they weren't the biggest guys, but they looked tough. They had a good build on them. They looked tough. And Ricky Morton never had what you call a great build, but Ricky Morton was a scrappy dude. And the thing is, I mean, and that was very believable because he got out there and he projected that, hey, I'm scrappy. I may be the smallest guy on the team here, but I'm going to fight you tooth and nail the whole way. And that's what made him believe it. He knew he was tough. And so that's the one thing that I think a lot of younger wrestlers miss is that they think it's all about it was one of the first things I learned in the wrestling business. People say it's not all about the bumps. It's not all about the falls. It's not all about the moves. It's how you project yourself. And I always tell a lot of young wrestlers, you want to see somebody who did it great in the movies, go back and watch Yul Brynner. And he's an old school actor from the legendary Hollywood days. Not a big person, but every role he ever played, he projected himself as a big person, and it showed on camera. And he looked like a tough guy. He was one of the first famous bald-headed guys. He had that voice. Everything about him said, I'm a tough guy. I may not be the biggest one, but I'm a tough guy. That's what I feel like every wrestler needs to find a way to hold on to and project that. You got to project that you're a cut above the average guy, and that's how you are able to call yourself a professional wrestler, is you do things that the average guy would not do, or the average person would not do, find a way to project that, however big or small you are. And if you don't do that, the one thing, and the one thing I always make a point to say is, never should there come a time when a wrestling fan, big or small, should be a paying customer and look at someone in the ring and say, I know I can kick that guy's butt.
Right. Yeah. No, that's
that's
perfect.
Not what wrestling projects, and now you might say that about a manager or a valet, but you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't think that in your mind about a wrestler. And once again, I'm not saying that you got to be a big guy. I'm just saying you got to. If you're not a big guy in stature, then you need to be fit. You need to have a little bit. You need to have some decent amount of balance size on you, and you need to look tough and scrappy. And that's a million different ways you can display that. So those are the things that I always say you need to look for. Those are the elements that will allow you to possibly be successful in this business. If you don't have that, in my opinion, you're going to be dead in the water. Yeah. And it's just usually it's an eye opener for people, and because a lot of people, they listen to their friends and family who think it's really cool that they're now playing pro wrestler, but there's it takes a lot to truly earn that title, and there's really only a select few that do earn it, especially on the indie scene, and there's a lot. The majority of them do not, in my eyes, earn it, and that's a shame because it's just gotten now where there's so many wrestling schools and most of them aren't qualified to be even doing what they're doing. But people, like I said, they think somehow that it's wrestling and 10 easy lessons. Well, that doesn't happen anywhere.
Right.
And some of them don't even take 10 lessons.
Oh my word.
But, and that kind of takes me to the one thing I did want to mention before we finish up is one of my good friends. He wrestles, and most people know him. He's wrestled in Ring of Honor. He's wrestled in Impact Wrestling. He wrestled as QT Marshall. He's a product of the Monster Factory out of New Jersey. He and I are actually partnering up to open up a wrestling school in Atlanta, Georgia. The grand opening is going to be the weekend of June. Actually, they're doing a soft opening on Monday the 1st of May.
Okay.
And just to kind of start generating some trainees, and then we're doing our first super camp June 16th and 17th in Atlanta. And it's the wrestling promotion is going to be called One Fall Wrestling, and I think QT's already started putting together a fan page and everything for that on Facebook. He started making some announcements, but and then the wrestling school itself is going to be called the Power Factory, and we kind of took my home was the power plant, the WCW power plant, and the Harvard of professional wrestling, still in my opinion the greatest wrestling school ever.
Yeah.
just saying, but and of course he came to the Monster Factory, so we combined Power Plant and Monster Factory and came up with Power Factory. So, but it's the thing that we are going to offer, in my opinion, that is different. I've been around and I've seen what other schools have to offer. And there's some good wrestling schools, especially here in Central Florida now, that are legitimate schools. But as I mentioned, and I'm sure you know too, Doug, I mean, there's most wrestling schools out there are not legitimate wrestling schools. And,
right.
And I always say, I think I said earlier, for people who are aspiring to be wrestlers and trying to break into this business and go somewhere to get trained, I always say you don't know what you don't know. So if you're someone who's totally green and naive to the business, you don't know anything, but you have the desire to want to train as a wrestler. You don't know if someone's training you improperly or not. That's the one thing that our brand I'm really going to make sure we build is that you will be trained properly. And not only that, but it will be a positive, constructive, fun environment where you will work your butt off, but we'll do it in a positive way. And it's an encouraging environment, and and it will be a lot of hard work, but it'll also be a place where where you can there'll be a lot of support too to do, because I believe in the training and wrestling should carry over to every other facet of your life too. It should just be an added dimension of who you are as a person. And we'll be doing a lot of different sports specific stuff that some of my mentors will be coming in and doing seminars. Chip Smith is one of my mentors and one of the closest people in my life. He's what they call the godfather of sports performance. His big thing is he trains guys for the NFL Combine, and he's trained some of the biggest names in the NFL. He will be coming in to do some sports-specific training with our trainees. One of my other great friends, Steve Day, who is in the Amateur Wrestling Hall of Fame, he's the one who trained Cody Rhodes, Coach Cody Rhodes, to the junior, senior year state championship when he was wrestling in high school. He'll be coming in to teach our guys some amateur wrestling. Dallas is going to be right down the road with a performance center, so our trainees will have an opportunity to go to the performance center and learn DDP yoga firsthand from Dallas. So we're going to be able to offer a lot of things. And with my, a lot of people don't know, I have a master's degree in health and wellness, exercise science. I'll be able to deliver a lot of that, where we are able to just even though I'm going to be living in Atlanta, I'll be traveling back and forth regularly to do some coaching and training, and QT will be running it on a daily basis up there. So yeah, it's going to be a very unique atmosphere where, like I said, you got to work your butt off, but it'll be a positive and supportive environment where you can feel good about what you're doing and know that what you're learning is going to be what you need to learn. Because QT and myself both have, one of my favorite quotes, I just put it on my fan page today, is, it's not what you know and it's not who you know, it's who's willing to say they know you, who's willing to put their name out there for you, so that you may have a chance to go to the next level. Dallas did that for me, and thank God he did. Or the last 21 years of my life could have been dramatically different, but that's what I want to be able to do, and then that's what QT wants to be able to do, is we want to be able to train people and say, if the time is right, we can make that call and get you in a position maybe to get looked at. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been working on right now.
I love that quote. I've heard Dallas use that quote before, and
Dallas got that from me.
Well, you're the king of quotes, right?
That's right. He got that from me years ago.
So, if it means anything to you, I've seen him do an interview independent of you, and he's used that quote.
And what I got it from one of my college coaches that I really respect an awful lot. And it has become probably my number one favorite quote, because it really is, in order for you to get anywhere in life, there's got to be people who believe in you, people who are willing to speak up for you and say, hey, you need to give this kid a look or give this kid a chance. Whoever that, and that's just throughout our entire lives, it doesn't matter what you're doing, let's face it, if you're a good guy and you want to meet some girl that maybe your buddy knows, if your buddy thinks you're a bozo, he ain't going to introduce you to her. So even in personal relationships, that quote works,
Yeah, right.
So I'm just saying, though, that it's, but and one of the other lessons too that I want to be able to offer to our wrestling, school and the promotion we're going to be doing is, and it's once again, it's the thing I learned from Dusty, is when we first opened up Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, the Wrestling Academy, I was Dusty's right-hand guy, and I was running the wrestling school, and the first couple of guys that got invited that Dusty allowed to come in, I disagreed with him on his choice, and because both these guys were undersized, I didn't think that either one of them had what we call the it factor, but they both were great kids, but they just, one was an average high school wrestler, but someone that I knew actually, and I love him to death still to this day, but he was kind of a goof, at that time, especially. He was only 18, 19 years old. But I remember sitting across from Dusty in his office, and he said, I said to him, I said, come on. I said, these are your first two picks. I said, to come into the school, I said, I don't get it. Can you help me understand this? I just remember him looking at me with that Dusty look, and kind of took a long pause. And then, it was one of those moments where I knew, I was like, I'm about to get a nugget of wisdom here. And Dusty just leaned forward across his desk, and he said, Raymond, he said, sometimes people need wrestling more than wrestling needs them. And I just, it hit me. I was like, boom. And Dusty was, what he was saying was, these two kids need somewhere to belong. And they love wrestling enough to where I'm going to give them a chance. And I don't know where it'll go, but I'm going to give them a chance. And I'll tell you what, in the long run, they lasted through the whole run of Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. One of them eventually got out of wrestling. The other one is still in it, and and still loving it. So, lesson learned, from
yeah, right.
From Dream. One of the neat lessons I learned from it. So, but that's what I want our environment to be too, is one to where people maybe they feel like maybe they get a lot more out of wrestling than even the wrestling gives to them. But just a place where they can belong, and they know they can come here and they're going to learn the right way. And I always emphasize, they're going to work hard. They're going to work harder than they probably ever worked in their lives, but it's going to be for a purpose. And it's going to be, and I always say too, people say, practice makes perfect, and my thing is like, no, that's not right. Perfect practice makes perfect. And our environment they're going to be able to learn the right way and practice the right way, and then take that to wherever they want to take it, once they leave us, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and yeah, I've got nothing to add on to that.
Well, one of the last things I do want to say is that one of the things I've finally done, thank God, I have two good friends of mine, Jim Moore and Karen Sear, and they own a marketing PR business here in Atlanta called Rogue Marketing. I started working with them about a month ago, and they have really, really, to say they've helped me really, with my social media and my PR and my marketing, to say they've helped me is a huge understatement. But the thing is, what I want to put out there to anybody who, especially a lot of the young independent wrestlers, or anyone out there, maybe even some of the veteran wrestlers who may be listening, anybody who feels like they need to gain a stronger brand, private message me on my fan page. They are the ones that oversee my fan page, even though I have a lot of interaction on there too. I mean, they talk to me every day, and then we decide what goes on my fan page. But private message me, and I'll make sure to relay that message to them. They are very willing. They want to brand themselves as the marketing and PR firm that actually helps wrestlers, to do their marketing and PR. So they are two of the best people I've ever known in my life. And Jim's he's a retired Army Ranger. He's a tough dude. So, but he's also very good at what he does marketing wise. So and so anybody who expect to see a lot more of me as far as the social media presence, because they're doing a great job. But anyone who's interested, please private message me, personal message me on my Facebook fan page, and I'll pass the message on to them. They'll get in touch with you, and they'll take it from there. But
and where can we find you?
My fan page, which is Glacier Ray Lloyd, and they're actually in the process right now of building my website. I'm also getting ready to launch here really soon. They're helping me with that. I'm going to be launching. I think something I talked about with you in the past is my business where I'm really trying to brand myself along the kind of lines of what Paige did with DDP Yoga is Glacier Healthy Living, whereas I'm really going to be applying my master's degree in health education to building a video blog where I give a lot of just free, valuable advice on good, healthy advice for the average person. Good advice they can use that can be quick, simple, and convenient. Little 1 minute, 2 minute videos on just things that everybody worries about, like how do you get enough sleep? How do you get the right kind of nutrition? How do you what's the right kind of exercise to do? What's too much? What's too little? Just really good common sense health and wellness knowledge that I think people will appreciate. And just something to say, hey, listen, give me a minute of your time. I can share something with you I think might be valuable. And that's just my way of like I said, just kind of passing along what I've been so fortunate enough to learn. And I'll probably also do a little bit more of a pro wrestling advisor video blog too, but one thing at a time.
Well, I know that TopRopeReport.com will definitely be sharing your stuff. So.
Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you. I appreciate you guys have always been good to me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Oh, it's so good to have you. I've never not talked to you without walking away with questions that were unanswered. But hey, that's just the state of things, right?
We'll do part 3.
Yeah, right. Oh, thank you so much, Ray.
Oh, thank you, Doug. I appreciate it, man, and look forward to every time we get a chance to talk. I really look forward to it, man. It's always a good time.